Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series. I'm Mark Gilbert. It's great to be back with you. I love coming on here on our rotating schedule and having a conversation with you. What is Saturday morning for me here in the Denver, Colorado area. And I appreciate you joining wherever you are. As we always do, we like to encourage you to drop your name and location in the chat field so that I can bring that up, and I'll do that in just a few minutes. So I'll mention that a couple of times. However, just a little bit about today. We are in the midst of the final end of the year where first half of the year, we always cover the Science of Mind textbook. We do that in sort of a chapter by chapter basis. And the last end of the year, we go through different documents that are Science of Mind oriented that come from the Science of Mind archives and present those to you and offer them as a bridge for some conversation this morning. And so that is what we're going to be doing today. We are going to be looking actually at an article from the 1946 July issue of Science of Mind magazine. And the title of that article is Democracy as a Spiritual Idea, and it was written by the founder of Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes. I thought that would be an appropriate topic for us to look at today. Today is, of course, November 9th, 2024, if you happen to be watching this on a recording. And this is like days after the U.S. election. And I don't know what it's like for you, where you are, but I know that this election, both preceding it and after the actual election, the results were out, has been a great topic of conversation among a lot of people. I know that in my own personal life, there's been a lot of individuals who I've been communicating with, either verbally or via email or text, and all the various ways in which we communicate with folks, social media. These days, there's been just a lot of conversation about the election and its impact on our future and all of that. And I'd like to say that there's plenty of content out there that you can watch, both on streaming services, TV, YouTube, et cetera, that take you down the path of the political aspect of the election. But what we're going to be doing today is a little bit different. We're going to be using this article from the 1946 issue of Science of Mind magazine as a bridge to talk about the spiritual aspects and what's ours to learn and do in relation to this election and its impact on us and those around us. And so everything we're doing today is going to be spiritually based. I am going to ask for some conversation and feedback from you. Jen, again, drop your comments in the comment field. I'll get those in just a few moments. And but I do want to stress the idea that today is not about discussing politics. It's about our spiritual reaction to the events of the world, that we look out at what's going on and we feel called to do or be something. If we called to learn and grow in some particular area, is there a message for us in all these worldly events that we can be called to and to bring into our lives so that we further our own personal evolution, our uplifting of consciousness to determine what's how we reorient how we see the world. And as we do that, the world changes. The world changes when we look at it a little bit differently. So that said, let me knock that off the screen, and let's knock that off the screen. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we are going to be asking you to drop your name and location in the comment field. And if you haven't done so, please do that and now. Also, let's see, let's take that off the screen and let's jump with and see some of the comments we've got. All right. Redneck from Calgary, Yahoo. Redneck, if you dropped your name in there, that'd be great too. Let's see. We've got good morning, everyone from Colorado. I am not knowing why I'm only seeing Facebook user for people's names. So, folks, you may want to drop your name in. There seems to be some little glitch here that's only showing me your where you're from and what your name is. So be sure to put your name in there. Let's see. Just going to drop through a bunch of these comments, and so you might precede your comment with your name is what I would ask you to do. I don't know why I am not getting your name in the user area of this. So hello, Mara from San Jose. Great to have you with us. And I'm just dropping, like I said, beautiful mountains of Colorado, where you're from. All right, Shay and Wayne, good to have you with us. And thank you very much, Wayne Baldwin here. Appreciate it. And like I said, and I may remind you several times, for some reason, I do not know why I am not getting your names up. I'm just getting a generic Facebook user when you post a comment, and that's maybe a problem with our system. So that said, let's go ahead and YouTube may work better. I don't know about that. The system throws the names in, and YouTube is up in line. But appreciate you trying to help me this morning. Anyway, let's jump into it, and we'll navigate through that. It won't be a concern, and we'll just make sure that we get the comments in and get the conversation flowing. As indicated, all the conversation today is around our being anchored in spirit and asking ourselves what's ours to do. And if I have an ultimate intention for today's call, it's to reorient your thinking away from focusing on the world of form and the world of the politics as we see out in the world, things that we debate. Why did Trump win? Why did Harris lose? What did one side do wrong? What did the other side do right? All of that. There's plenty of political pundits out there, but what I want us to do is to take this to a higher level. And I want you to look at life in sort of a three-layer cake, and I'll express this a couple of times. And that is, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and that we live in multiple realms at one time, that we live not only in the world of spirit, but we live in the world of mind and the world of form, the physical world. And so that in our mental world, we have a choice. We can look at the world of form and define ourselves and our actions and through all the things that are working in the physical world, or we can look up to spirit. And spirit calls us down with through insights and intuition. We get the information about the patterns of possibilities of what's possible for our lives and for the world from spirit. But oftentimes our focus is on the material world, and we look downward. So it's sort of like a three-layer cake, and I want you to focus on that as we go through some readings this morning. And so that said, I want to bring up this little banner to show you that democracy is a spiritual idea is the article we're going to be looking at. I'll be throwing the quotes up on the screen because I know most of you probably are not sitting around with the July 1946 issue of Science of Mind magazine in your house. But that said, you can go get it. And the way you can get this particular magazine is to go to the Science of Mind Archives website. And let's see if I can show you that. Let's see. Yep. Science of Mind Archives website right there. There's the website for it, scienceofmindarchives.com. If you are a member or subscriber of the website or the archives, friend of it and supporter, you get a download, free 20 downloads a month by joining them. I happen to be the vice president of the board of the archives and one of their key researchers. And so I encourage you to check out the website. We're always adding lots of new content to it. And in there, you can find the 1946 issue of Science of Mind magazine. It was written, in July. You got to think about the context of what was going on in the U.S. at the time. Coming out of World War II, it was July, the 4th of July, and the issue had a number of articles focused on the idea of 4th of July and Independence Day and things of that nature. So there were some very spiritual articles that were in this magazine that were looking at spirituality from a political standpoint. And if that's something that cost you, there's plenty of other articles that I'm not even going to be getting into today. And you can get this by going to the Science of Mind Archives and either purchasing it as a one-time item or joining and getting it as one of your free downloads. So I encourage you to do that as well. And so that said, again, I want us to look at the particular issue, but I first want to jump into And I'm going to come back to some comments in a moment. So keep putting your comments in there. If you're posting on YouTube, I did notice that some of the comments are popping up, and I'm seeing names on those. The ones for Facebook are going to be generic. If you're on Facebook, please put your name in with a comment each time so we'll know who's commenting. I said, let's actually do that. We got Linda here. Yay. Thank you, Linda. Greetings from South Africa with Garrett. Garrett, great to have you there. I was back in South Africa in 2020. Loved the country. Great people. Great place. Love is the creative force of the universe. I'm just going to pop through these. Thanks. Co-creator. Yes, we live in multiple realms at once. I agree. That's what the whole point. I appreciate the focus today. Thank you. I'm on YouTube now. Thank you, Shay, for popping over to YouTube. That way I can see your name, be with your fourth chakra. Awesome. Okay, great. Let us now look at a couple of things. First thing I want to look at, and I'm going to run through this one rather briefly, is an article that was in the magazine. And while I'm doing that, I want you to think about the following things. I want you to share your thoughts, if you have any in the moment, about what does democracy mean to you. Again, we're keeping this in the spiritual realm. So how does it relate to your spiritual journey? And how are you reacting to the recent U.S. election in connection with your spiritual growth? So tying the election results and any reactions and feelings that you're having around that to your own spiritual growth. If you have any thoughts on that or democracy and what it means to you, drop those into the comment field. And then I'm also going to be sharing some quotes here now. And as I read through these, if these generate any thoughts or questions, be sure and drop those in the comment field as well. And the first article I'm going to look at is not the Ernest Holmes one, but I'm going to drop, there was an article that preceded the Ernest Holmes one in the magazine. It was called We the People by somebody named McCullough St. John's. You may wonder, who is McCullough St. John's? I was curious when I pulled up this article and read it. And the name was familiar because I was familiar with a person by the name of Adela Rogers St. John. So a little bit of genealogy stuff. Easy answer was to look at the masthead of this issue of the magazine and see that McCullough St. John's was the editor of the Science of Mind magazine in 1946. So he was the editor of this particular issue. But as I did a little research on, okay, who is he? I found out that he was the adopted son of a woman by the name of Adela Rogers St. John, who, for many of those who are familiar with Science of Mind history, was a friend of Ernest Holmes and also wrote a number of articles for the magazine. She also was a fairly famous screenplay writer in the early part of the 20th century, wrote a lot of screenplays, worked with William Randolph Hearst as a journalist, and so forth. Had her own sort of famous career, but discovered Ernest Holmes, became friends with him, and wrote many articles for the magazine, wrote the daily guides for a number of months. And she also had children. She had two children, one by the name of Elaine St. John's, who went on to be a good writer for the Science of Mind magazine. Also, Elaine St. John's, her daughter, became editor for many years of Norman Vincent Peale's Guidepost magazine. So very much into New Thought and positive thinking. Adela Rogers St. John also had a son named William and another son named McCullough. McCullough she adopted. McCullough was essentially the brother of Elaine St. John's, the daughter of Adela Rogers St. John's, but was the current editor of the magazine in 1946. Let's look at a couple of quotes from his article that month. He stated, "The Declaration of Independence was not a political statement of intentions. It was not motivated by a desire for individual power or class rule, nor did it attack others because of their race, creed, or nationality. It was primarily a recognition of the spiritual law governing man and of his right to the liberty provided through this law." Again, I want you to think in that three-layer, multiple realm concept. He's saying that the Declaration of Independence actually came from the spiritual realm. That it was an intuitive and inspirational insight from the spiritual realm that came in through the forefathers of the United States. He goes on to write that Thomas Carlyle wrote, "It is the spiritual always which determines the material. It was the spiritual emotions of the liberty-seeking men of the original 13 states that determined the course of events, which led to the solidifying of the greatest democracy the world's ever known. Just as surely as those men saw and met their moral obligations, we must recognize the necessity of obeying the law of truth. Today, the United States stands at a crossroads. One path leads to greatness, the other to oblivion and decadence. The future depends solely on we, the people. Unless we see this, meet this fact, and as individuals strengthen our own moral fiber follow the United States from the pinnacle of success to the depths of failure will be heard throughout eternity. Now, I want to stop there for a moment. What is he getting at? That the Declaration of Independence was inspired by the spiritual realm, and that we in the human realm it's our task to keep that spiritual idea afloat. That there is always a crossroads. There was a crossroads in 1946 when they were writing this, coming out of World War II, and where were we going to go? We were at a crossroads now, I think many feel, in what's going on in the world. And so our future depends on us. It depends on our thoughts, our actions, our words, our deeds. So how are we going to step up and be a force for bringing that inspirational idea of the spiritual idea of democracy more into the world? And that's what St. John's was calling us to do. A couple of more quotes from his article, and then we'll look at your comments. If the United States is to lead the world to peace, then it's up to the people to prepare themselves for that leadership. And it's not just leaders, I want to add. It's us. It's all of us. We're all leaders. History shows that every nation that's tumbled into obscurity from the pinnacle of leadership has done so when its people have embraced false gods and slid into moral decadence. It is an unchangeable law of God that in order to receive good, with a capital G, man must practice good, with a capital G. That law applies to us just as fairly as it does to any other nationality. So he's pointing out, St. John's is pointing out here that, the world and countries can fall into oblivion, and they always have these choice points when they follow false gods and slide into moral decadence. Some of you may feel that we're doing that. Some of you may not, and that's okay. But what are we to do either way? It is to look at and bring more good into the world. And I want you to notice good with a capital G, which has a distinction. Because whenever you see things capitalized, it's talking about it from the spiritual realm. We can talk about doing good in the world of form and in the world around us, but it's driven often by our intuitive knowing of the good that rests in the realm of spirit, and bringing the realm of the absolute down in through our mental thoughts and through our physical actions into the world of form, and to bringing good into the life. And that is where he was calling us to do that. So my question then is to the other questions: what do these quotes say to you? What is the good that we must practice? So let's see where we've got some comments here. I will. Okay. Mara, I'm taking one moment at a time and holding the vibration. Very good. Holding that high vibration, the good for life. Just flash through some of these real quick, and you can read them on the screen. Yes, it's us as leaders, and we are the leaders. Okay. And so, again, if you post in Facebook, I'm not seeing your name, so please precede your comments with your name. First name's good. And if you're on YouTube, I'm getting the names. That thing said, I want you to think, what is yours to do? What is the spiritual lesson? What is the good that you're called to bring into the world through that? And so, as mentioned, I wanted to look at the works in an article written by Ernest Holmes, again, July 1946 issue of Science of Mind magazine. Democracy is a spiritual idea. And as I go through some quotes from this, what I want you to do is to keep that picture in mind of that spiritual realm, mental realm, physical realm that we're living in. We're spiritual beings having a human experience in the world of form. Our thoughts are a bridge between the realm of spirit and the realm of form. The more that we can turn our focus up to the intuitive truths that flow to us from the divine realm of the absolute and spirit, the more that we can bring those into the world. Yes, we are moving through events in the world that we label and judge and give words to. What is mine to do in terms of looking at that world and bringing it into a higher vibration, a higher level of truth. And so back in 1946, Ernest Holmes addressed these very issues with the topic of democracy as a spiritual idea. Democracy as a spiritual idea. Here's one of the first quotes that I want to share with you. And it's very similar to what St. John's was writing, but he goes a little deeper with that topic. He says, the men who wrote the Declaration of Independence were not only versed in history, they were spiritual philosophers, intuitively working out a plan for human betterment. They believed in a divine pattern for humanity and permitted their intellects to look upward long enough to catch a form from this invisible pattern. The document which followed their inspiration was divine as well as human. Again, if you keep in mind what I'm talking about, Holmes is saying that. He says that the forefathers of the U.S., in their writing of the Declaration of Independence, in their minds, in their consciousness looked upward to spirit, and spirit are these divine patterns. They don't dictate what happens in the world of form, but they do give us guidance for a higher path. If we stop and can listen to intuition or to those other ways in which spirit speaks to us, we can turn our attention upward to the spiritual realm and tap into that and be guided to create more good with a capital G, into the world of form. And that's what democracy is a part of. Okay. So he's telling us here that the Declaration of Independence was divinely guided. He goes on to write that the highest hope and the possibility of the greatest ever set down on paper was a result of the deep yearning of these men toward the spirit, a sincere desire to make practical that which was they conceived to be the ideal. Let me stop there. Practical, we always talk about practical mysticism. Mysticism comes in our recognition of the mystical nature of life, comes from the spiritual realm. But then we also talk about being practical, that we live in the world of form, we live in the world of relationships with one another. And so it's bringing the high ideals of the good from the spiritual realm down into the world of form. And Holmes is pointing that out, that they were not only guided by their thoughts on democracy, but they also conceived it to be ideal, but it also had to be made real. But this vision itself, continuing the quote, high though it was not enough. It was necessary that their vision pointing the pathway to human freedom have a framework of law and order that might function effectively. Hence the Constitution of the United States, a necessary and effectual adjunct to the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution, the code of laws, however, followed the inspiration of this declaration, which was the intuition of the divine presence. The vision was necessary to the spirit of man. The laws were necessary for his conduct. Again, as I'm reading this, if you have thoughts and questions, drop them in to the chat. I'll bring up the comments that are relevant to this. Again, I would invite you that we're not getting into spiritual debates about who's right and who's wrong. We're looking at this from a spiritual standpoint. And again, I hope you're seeing that what Holmes was writing about, and it's just as relevant today as it was when he wrote this, is that the Declaration of Independence was the tapping into the intuition and bringing that pattern of the ideal down into the world of form, but it was coupled with the Constitution, which provided laws to guide the spirit of man in the world of form. Now, again, here's a map that sort of shows it. Spiritual realm through the mental realm down to the physical realm. God embedded itself into this physical realm, and we are experiencing life as the divine for the divine, that each day our lives are an experience where we have free will choice through our choices and thoughts in the mental realms and our actions in the physical realm as to how we experience and what we do and be in life. And that's what we're called to continuously remind ourselves, that we have these free will choices. But God has embedded itself into us, and it is experiencing the life. It's the bliss of life, the joy of life through us. And we have a role to play in our evolution to remember that truth and to evolve back into knowing the interplay and oneness of all of life. That's what all of life and all of its play is about, is for each of us as individualized expressions of the one to remember that truth and to evolve into the greatest recognition of it. In fact, enlightenment or awakening, or whatever word you want to give to it, is growing in the knowledge through that evolutionary process that we are these spiritual beings united in oneness. And so democracy is a tool to bring us into the remembrance of that truth and to remind us to bring the good, the patterns from the spiritual realm down into the physical realm. And so all the worlds of events can sometimes mesmerize us and make us forget the spiritual truth. And what we're looking to do is to use the events in the physical world as a reminder towards our real truth. So keep that in mind as we look at these next quotes. Holmes goes on to write, in the Declaration of Independence, we have a concept of divine man, the personal, the individual, the dignity of the human soul, the inalienable rights of the human spirit, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. This is the vision shown our forefathers on the mount of their spiritual contemplation, giving birth to an idea of freedom such as never before had been conceived in mass. But the dream must be brought to earth. The ideal must be made practical. Therefore, the Constitution necessarily followed. The law and order must reign even where high inspiration had infused the concept of divinity in humanity. He adds, It is inconceivable to believe that these two documents were written merely by chance. They didn't just happen. They were the revelations of the nature of the universe in which we live. Of course, in the sense that revelation is not something imposed upon man by divine decree, but is rather a result of that lowly listening, which Emerson referred to as necessary if we wish to draw the divine into our intellects. We all are those lowly listeners, listening to the divine. Right now in your own life, you're having messages given to you through the results of this election and the other events that are going on in your life, for giving you ideas and guidance through your intuition for that. And if you can lowly listen to what Spirit is telling you, there is guidance being given to you for what is yours to be and show up in the world, to more awaken to their oneness and to bring that more pattern of that higher pattern of good and love and perfection into the world of form. So this events are a reminder for us. They're a reminder. And the entire creation of the democracy of the U.S., as so much has been talked about, that democracy is under attack, et cetera, et cetera. So much of democracy was this idea that was birthed, and it will continue to be birthed no matter what happens and what we do in the world of form. That Spirit is calling us to home through the idea of finding a political pattern so that us as individualized expressions of that one can find a way to navigate through the world of form and love in a way that honors all of our differences. So Holmes continues. He says, liberty is dearly bought, continuously paid for, and hard to keep. It's easy in the midst of confusion to dissipate its precious heritage. It's easy to blot it out. Its vision must be a progressive one. We believe in a universal spirit forever incarnating in humans, forever expressing itself in all of nature. Notice itself is capitalized. God is expressing itself in all of nature. Nature is everything in the world of form, everything that is around us, from this computer and the internet, and that we're using, your video equipment that you're listening to this on. All of this is nature. It's God, and God is expressing itself in all of nature. Continuing, we believe that through intuition and lowly listening, individually and collectively, we may draw the nature of the Spirit into our consciousness. We believe in the fundamental unity of all men, centered in this one presence, which is God, the living Spirit Almighty. So we are that oneness. And when we stop and give our attention and focus our minds on our differences through the world of form, when we focus on political arguments and divisiveness, we're focusing not on our ultimate truth, which is the one presence, but we can, as Holmes describes it, do this lowly listening from the spiritual realm and listen to what is our greater truth, what is ours to understand and grow and evolve in our spiritual path. Then we are moving towards awakening, enlightenment, and our ultimate destiny in our spiritual evolution. But the key sentence there is the last one I haven't read on the screen. But we do not believe that unity means uniformity. We are unified in spirit, but we're individualized expressions with free will that can be and do show up in the world in different ways. And so we need to honor that as we look out at all of the other spiritual beings. We need to be anchored in the awareness that we are one with them no matter what they're doing and being. Now, that doesn't mean not have healthy boundaries for people who are in a mesmerized into a world of competition in actions where they may be causing harm to another. Yes, we must have healthy boundaries when people are missing the mark and acting from a sense of separation and fear. But at the same time, we've got to, as we keep healthy boundaries with people who may be trying to do harm to us, we have to also recognize that our unity with everyone and no matter what they believe. And so we have a call to us to bring and recognize the unity in life that's behind everything and act from the good to develop that unity in our expression on form. Holmes continues, the Spirit has seen fit to incarnate itself a little bit differently in each one of us. We do not have to think alike or act alike in order to operate from the basis of unity. The concept of unity should never be misconstrued to mean uniformity. It means a unity in which there is a possibility of infinite variations. Each one of these variations is a unique expression of the infinite one and must be in its sight and should be in ours a holy thing. Now, it's easy for us to look out at life and see all the people who believe things politically different from us. And we wonder how they believe those things. How can they look at life that way? But what Holmes is asking us to do is to recognize that we are individualized expressions, that there is this way in which everybody expresses themselves, and to us to see the unity behind it, even though it's not uniform. So no matter which end of the political spectrum you may be on, can you look at those at the other end of the political spectrum and see and value their perspective? See and value that their individual lives and their experiences and their beliefs have led them to a pattern that is expressing in the way that they want. Now, yes, I agree with some people that there are some things that are going on in our political arena where people are so divided from the higher levels of truth that they're making choices which might be and tend to be harmful. But that's where we can step up in our individual roles to speak out, to be a force for good, to remind everyone of their truth. I think that at the heart of every person on this planet is a heart of goodness, a heart of love. And if we can look out and see life that way, it doesn't mean we have to believe what they believe politically. And it means that we can speak up when we think that they're taking actions that are not in the greater good. But we have to also own up and recognize that there, but for the grace of God go I. If I had lived their life and walked their life in their shoes, that I would probably believe like they did. And I need to honor that pattern and look for common ground with people so that we can find unity. We have a role to play, not only in seeing unity, but to bring unity on the planet and in our political sphere. No matter what the outcomes of elections. Every time there's an election, there's always one side that is unhappy with the results. They're unhappy and fearful about what that other side is going to be doing. And we have a role to bridge the gap, to bridge the differences, and to remind people of our unity. And so we starts with us in our individual sphere of influence. If we can see unity in our individual lives, if we can look out and bring unity into our lives and allow the differences of opinions and actions and see the unity behind it, then we're making great strides in our own development, our own spiritual path. It should be, as he said, as Holmes says here, that we should be looking at these infinite ones and all their variations in expression, and it should be in ours a holy thing that we're seeing. Holmes continues, a state is made up of numberless individual units joined together for the purpose of self-protection and self-advancement. A state is or should be a human embodiment of the divine ideal. Democracy is a political system, perhaps without hardly understanding it, seeking to follow the invisible pattern of the city of God. In this pattern, there's both unity and variety. There's the universal presence and the individual person. There's also law and order. The universe is a cosmos and not a chaos. Now, what is he saying there? By the quotes, the city of God, he's talking about that ultimate pattern of the greatest expression of God on this planet. You know, if you really touch into it and you try to visualize what's the highest and greatest for this world, we can imagine a world where everybody is born into an existence, a material existence where they're loved and supported and give them freedom to grow to the highest levels of who they can be, to express their individual talents and abilities, that they have the freedom to express themselves at the highest level, and to also grow into and recognize that they're not individual and apart from everybody, but they're unified with everybody. And that the fact that they have different ways in which they express themselves and different beliefs is just the way in which spirit is infinitely expressing the blissfulness of life through that infinite variety. So we need to let go of our judgments and recognize that when we're making judgments about others, it's more about us. Judgments, it's like in the words of Jesus, judge not, lest ye be judged, which in one interpretation means that when we judge others, it's really more about ourselves than it is about the other person. When we point out at somebody else and judge them for being different, or their beliefs are different, or how can they act or have voted that way, we have to stop and look at our own judgment. And how can we be that capital G good and bring more love to the planet and seek to understand the other person before trying to have our position understood. Democracy is a political system. It's a political system in the world of form, but it's driven by that divine idea that contains that quote unquote city of God within it. There's a universal presence, but there's also expressing individually. There's also law and order. Law and order means not only in our thoughts and actions, there's ultimately the reaction. As we think something and act upon something, the universe is a cosmos that plays back by giving us whatever is the reaction to that law and order. As we teach, our thoughts and actions, our words and our deeds are creative. And as we're inspired by spirit to think something, and our thoughts have a creative force followed by our actions, that we can make changes in the world of form. That is the law and order, that everything follows that pattern, whether we know it or not. And that pattern contributes to a cosmos. If we thought and acted in a way and got something different, that would be a chaos, Holmes is telling us. So we need to remember that we have a role here through our individual thoughts and actions. Yes, let me just stop here. I see a comment. Shay's saying, I'm finding unity within and integration is so important for radical acceptance of what is and other people. That is so true, Shay. It's a call for all of us to find the unity in it and to integrate the differences. You know, what I've come to believe is that people who believe differently from me politically, it's easy to sometimes just get lost in that. Why did they believe like that? What did they vote like that? How can they support this person who has what I see as obviously these flaws? You know, and we can all, and each side can point at that. You know, you hear the one side pointing at the other and saying, you know, I can't vote for that person, and the other side saying, I can't vote for that person. And we're all tending to focus on the negative stuff of the others. And then we look at the supporters and we tend to say, how can these people believe the stuff that they are believing on their side when my side says this? Well, this is where we need to seek first to understand and then integrate their differences into ours and see the unity within it. So you're finding unity within an integration is so important. Radical acceptance. I love that phrase, Shay. Radical acceptance, because it's radical for us to accept things that we don't believe. It's like on the one hand, I can look at the other end of the political spectrum and things they are supporting and say, how can I bring an acceptance into that? No, it doesn't mean I have to agree with it, but it means that I can look at that political position and understand how people came to that and then seek some common ground. I know I was in a conversation the other day about, how can I find common ground? And I said, there's always common ground. And the person said, well, yes, but when I say that, why do you, if I try to do that and they say this and this and this, I have differences of opinion. I said, well, then back up. There's always common ground. If we start from the realm of the political difference, sometimes it's harder to find the common ground and to find acceptance of that person's beliefs. But if we start with, well, I'm a human being and you're a human being, and I have desires for my life and for my children and for my grandchildren. You have desires for your life and your children and your grandchildren. And we both want to use the political system in our country as a tool for creating a safe environment for our children to grow towards, the greatest expression of how they can be in life and what that looks like. Now, we can then get into the political difference, but we have to start by having a base level of seeing a level of unity. And radical acceptance always starts with finding common ground. There we can accept the person on the terms of who they are, that they have so much in common. Every person out there that you think is different from you, no matter who it is, if you sat down and had a conversation and said, let's list the ways that we are alike, you would have a long, long list of it. If you start with that conversation with, here's how we're different, your conversation's not going to get very far. So we have to have that kind of radical acceptance that finds the common ground in other people. Back to Holmes for a minute. We must combine our idea of the spiritual man forever drawing his inspiration on high with the human being seeking as best he may to follow the inspiration of the divine leadings, expressing himself as an individual to the fullest degree of his possibility, yet always in conformity with the universal law of cause and effect. And what's he saying there? That as we, as human beings, as we seek to follow every person seeking to follow their divine inspirations, Every person is. And sometimes their decisions and actions are in conflict with what we felt it was. But we got to stop and recognize that they're expressing themselves to the fullest degree of their possibilities, just as we are, and that we're both subject to the law of cause and effect, that our thoughts and words and actions are going to have a manifestation in the world of form. So we have to keep in mind that there's a commonality there just right off the bat. Holmes, continuing, says, in doing this, individualism often runs amok and seeks to impose its personal ideas on others. And we all see this. This is what I was talking about a minute ago when I said that sometimes people in the expressions of themselves start doing things that bump into and can cause harm to another people. And we have to recognize when that's happening and when it's not. So when other persons are making decisions that can cause harm, we have to have healthy boundaries. And those healthy boundaries may be in an interpersonal relationship to say, no, I don't believe that, or however we proper to step up and have a healthy boundary. Sometimes it's removing yourself from the situation. But in the political arena, it's voting our conscience. It's speaking out. It's taking steps to present the other side of the issue and put healthy guardrails around actions of people who may be misguided and causing harm through what they're doing. Now, what happens is every human being bumps into each other. They've got core beliefs, and sometimes they bump in, and there's a gray area where we might say, the highest vision for me is this, and you may think the highest vision is this other thing. And we have to work those out. We have to work them out, and we have to work them out in a peaceful manner, Holmes writes, democracy is designed to protect us from this possibility, to keep the game straight. The Constitution is an umpire for this purpose, impersonal in itself, but applying to all personalities. It's an attempt to regulate by law those individual actions, which because of the excess of their enthusiasm or self-desire, might destroy the possibility of freedom itself. And can you relate to that? Because so much of the political discussion in leading up to the election and continuing is that some of the actions and decisions by people have crossed into that area through their excess of their enthusiasm or excess of their self-desire, whichever it is. They may be leading towards what many of us might see the possibility of destroying freedom itself. But the Constitution was designed to give guardrails on that. And yes, it's easy to say, well, all these things are occurring which may destroy our Constitution. And what's ours to do? Well, ours is to step up and to remind people of the variation in belief, but the unity that underlines all. And that means as you're called to, take political action in the world of form, but always have it guided by spiritual truths, not by a desire to harm the other or to make the other person wrong, but to find unity and common ground, and from there, build a system and political decisions that work for everyone. One of the wonderful things about the Constitution is it builds a system of checks and balances into it, that every 2 years we get to put a referendum on how the government changes. And so nothing is forever. Yeah, there was a lot of debate about, whether one candidate would, in this election, take those guardrails off and make changes and destroy democracy. But, I'm optimistic that that's not the case. And we all have to be a force for good to remind ourselves and our neighbors, and I think most of the people who voted for either candidate, know that we can step up and make changes and raise our voice to maintain the guardrails. I think what I want you to really see is that the Declaration of Independence was an inspired document that created democracy as an inspired means of political organization to guide the differences of humanity in the world of form into bringing them together into a way in which they can meld those differences together politically and birth something more. And it's up to us to continue to bring that thing forward. And there's going to be higher and higher versions of this because we are on an ever upward arc of evolution. And so sometimes when there is a breakdown, there's a breakthrough. And so some of the challenges that we may be seeing now in the world of form regarding democracy are actually an opportunity for growth and expansion and a breakthrough to some new level of understanding. And I think we need to see that. We need to see that. And at the same time, be diligent in saving and protecting the democracy that we have. Continuing with Holmes, it is good for one individual to do something, it's not good for one individual to do something which harms another. It's good for all individuals to live together in unity while still remaining individuals. It's good that the rights of the individual shall be protected so long as they do not impose upon the rights of another individual. This is democracy. This is that liberty won with effort, kept by courage, and sustained through spiritual vision. So what we are all called to do is to recognize that it's our role to live together in unity, while still maintaining our individuality, to protect the rights of everyone and ensuring that they don't impose on the rights of another, to maintain a strong democracy and recognize and value the beliefs of others who are different from us. So that's what I'm telling you, and I would stop here just to say, what are your reactions to this? We've got just a couple of minutes, and I hope this has been helpful. I appreciate whoever wrote that comment. The conversation gives you hope for moving forward, and that's my idea today, is for you to shift your focus as you look out on all of the stuff going on in the world, all the political debates. It's easy to get lost in the political arguments that are focused on the world of form. And as you, as a religious scientist, you as a person who studies the science of mind, I would invite you to lift upward your thoughts to the world of spirit and be inspired for finding unity, to recognizing that unity doesn't mean uniformity, that we're all going to express ourselves and have different beliefs. And so long as we do that in a manner that doesn't harm one another, then we maintain that system of checks and balances that was set in place by our Constitution here in the United States, that we'll be okay, that we can move forward. In fact, it's been a natural pattern. I'll leave you with this one thought, or one that I like to remind people of, and it comes from the Kabbalion, written by William Walker Atkinson under the name Three Initiates many years ago, over 100 years ago. In that, he writes that everything in the world is subject to the law of rhythm. It's like a pendulum swinging back and forth. And so times change, and sometimes one side of the political spectrum gets voted in, and the other time the other political spectrum goes in. Sometimes we believe one thing about a particular political issue, and then over time we swing the other way. We're continuously swinging, but in that swinging, we're also moving upward. And if you look at a pendulum swinging and moving upward, then you start to see it's sort of like a spiral. And Holmes writes much about this, is that our evolution is ever upward spiraling, and that we are continuously moving back and forth in a rhythm in life. And all that is going on out there right now in the world of form is part of that grand rhythm of that unity of the one, moving through the world of form, expressing itself in its uniqueness, sometimes crossing boundaries that seem to be wanting to cause harm to other expressions of the one because they've forgotten that unity. But that's where you, in your spiritual evolution, are called to find that unity. To find that unity. I hope this has been helpful today. And I'd like to close with just a short prayer, knowing that even though we've gone over a couple of minutes, I don't normally end these programs with prayer. I'm not seeing other comments in the comment field, but I think that it would behoove us to just end with a short affirmative prayer. So let's go within for a moment. And as we shift our attention and focus inward, we can feel into and sense that there is a unity of all of life. We know that when we turn away from the everyday outward world, which seems to want to mesmerize us into seeing and focusing upon our differences, when we shift inward and listen to our intuition and know that we are one, that we tap into a sense of the unity of all of life. We know that as we've developed along our spiritual path, that we continue to grow in a recognition and spend more time in our consciousness, in that mental realm, coming from a sense of unity. And as we anchor ourselves into that oneness and into that unity, and we bring forth that individualized, unique expression of ourselves, that we know that we can bring our love to the planet. We can know that we step further in form in a way that brings love to others and breaks down the divisiveness and helps the world to see that divine pattern that is behind us, that city of God that Ernest Holmes talked about, that behind all the sense of differences is a divine perfection calling us home to recognize and grow and awaken to the fact that we are all one. And we know that every time that we have these breakdowns in the world of form, that it is an opportunity for us to break through in our consciousness to a greater expression of knowing at the deepest level of our soul that we are all one. And I know this for each and every one of us today, that as we move forward in life, that we voice what's ours to be said in a way that comes from love and light and fosters love and light and unity and oneness on planet Earth. Thank you, God, and so it is. And thank you all for joining me today. Thank you for this conversation, for letting me share this article from the Science of Mind. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope this video and discussion has been beneficial. Yes, and so it is. Take care, everybody.